The next part of this project is going to be the retaining wall around the outside where the rebar is, and I think it's going to be the hardest part of the project. I'm going to frame it like a wall with 2x4 studs, except the bottom plate and the top plate needs to be curved, so I'm going to cut them out on the CNC table. The rainy season started around here, which always makes concrete more exciting. It's just a crazy amount of lumber and plywood that I calculated I needed, but just no way around it, I guess. I'm going to use screws when I put it together, so hopefully I can take it apart carefully and reuse it for something else.
I spent some time drawing up the forms, all the way down to the stud and snap tie positions. Then I broke apart the curved bottom plate and top plate into sections I could cut out of 4x8 plywood sheets. My first pass was just numbering each piece, and then I started cutting them out. I added a couple hundred extra pounds of weight to help pull down the plywood. A few of the boards kicked loose before the final pass, which I needed to trim up with a flush trim bit. I cut the ribs out of 3/4 inch plywood and then doubled them up so they match the thickness of 2x4s used for the rest of the framing. I'm really hoping they're strong enough. There's going to be a lot of bending pressure on these curved forms. The bottom plate runs the full length of the wall, so I had to assemble that on the ground. I'm overlapping all the seams, but I'm sure they're still going to be the weak point. While the CNC table cut out the next sheet in the background, I started cutting out all the studs to length, checking them off as I went. I also CNC'd a template to mark the stud locations for both the inner and the outer walls, since they'll have to be spaced differently to match up with each other. I bailed pretty quickly on the idea of using screws for everything. I realized that would have taken forever. And I love getting to use the framing nailer. The retaining wall is going to have 3 sections, stepping down as the hillside drops away behind it.
Perfect. Alright, I've been working on getting the sheathing on there. It's been a little harder than I was expecting, but I think I have it figured out now. So nothing is square in the framing, of course. It leans side to side pretty easily. And I think that I found the right thing to do is to start off with the biggest piece. Use a full sheet on this upper part here and make the framing match the sheet because I know this sheet is square. On this first form I did, I started off with the smallest piece right here, thinking it'd be the easiest. And I was just off a little bit. Wasn't quite square, and then the next piece gets a little more exaggerated, and the last one is really hard to get square, so I think it was the wrong ways to go. I gotta start off with a nice square section and then build off of it. One of the harder things is just getting accurate measurements on the inside of these bins. 79 3/16.
To get the 1/2 inch plywood to bend enough to match the curve, I put relief cuts on the backside centered on each stud and crossed my fingers so I wouldn't lose too much strength. I cut about halfway through the sheet for each relief cut.
Because not only can all the framing be tilted sideways, it can also be forward or back, and it changes as it goes around the curve, so it's just all over the place. But I know the plywood's square, so if I make the frame match the plywood, then it really squares everything up and makes it a lot nicer for the next pieces too. Okay, got that corner on there. And this is the really important part. I gotta get it perfectly lined up with the framing underneath. That looks pretty good.
As I worked around the bend, I forced the framing to match the plywood's top edge. Once I got the hang of it, it was really satisfying how cleanly the plywood squared everything up.
I feel much more like I'm building a half pipe for Tony Hawk than I am a fire pit.
The outward bends were the easy ones. They went quite a bit faster.
Here's one thing that's probably common sense to most people, but still took me too long to learn, is like for this board I need it to be 25 inches long. There's gonna be a miter cut at the end, 13 degrees. And instead of trying to mark the miter and cut it accurately, which is hard trying to match up with the blade, the first thing I do is cut the miter on the end. And then I can hook the miter and measure over my 25 inches and cut it square. Just a lot easier to do the miter first and then cut off the end second.
Pretty loud.
Pretty loud. All right, I got all the pieces cut. See if I can figure out how this puzzle goes together.
These next forms are for the walls that run up the sides of the stairs, tying into the curved retaining wall at the bottom. I'm going to pour them all at the same time. Same method, building the framing first, then forcing it to match the plywood.
Are you lost?
They ended up being some pretty odd looking shapes.
All right, forms are done. I have no idea how I'm gonna get these things out there. They're so heavy. I'm starting to wonder if I should have made them in 3 pieces. It's been a lot easier to move, but I don't know if it would have been as accurate of a curve, so it's nice having them all one piece, as long as I can get them out there. The inside corner of the concrete form leaves a really sharp corner, and I want to try 3D printing an insert that would give it a little radius and make it a little softer edge there.
I drew up a small test piece in SketchUp. It's going to be a fairly big print, so I wanted to make sure it's going to be right first.
I think that's gonna be about right.
I extended my test piece up to 10 inches and made a bunch of copies of it and sent it to the printer. It's been such a powerful tool for me to add a 3D printer to my workshop. The Bamboo H2D is a personal manufacturing hub designed for individual use.
This is gonna be satisfying.
It's really amazed me how hands-off it is once I start a print. It's been my experience that I basically click start and walk away. The H2D is a multifunctional 3D printer, and it easily switches over to laser cutting and engraving. I'm just finding all kinds of uses for the H2D, and now even Roshin is coming up to me with all these specific projects for us to make with the H2D.
Tell me again all the things that you want in this mirror. You said
I wanted a rainbow.
a rainbow.
A heart. I want a unicorn head.
Unicorn head, okay. Sparkles, did you say sparkles? I think we should have your name on there. How does that sound too?
Good idea.
Okay, this is gonna be very pretty. Okay, Rose, so we got the rainbow up top, we got a big star, we got some unicorns, we got your name, lots of stars and clouds, and then this is the mirror in the middle. Does that look pretty good? You think it'll work?
Yeah.
Good, okay.
Lucky for me, there is a lot of unicorn and rainbow models that I could download for free from Bamboo's library and import into this mirror project. The H2D is a dual head 3D printer, which saves a ton of time when it comes to multicolor prints, such as this monstrosity of a mirror.
I'm using 8 different filaments on this print, and this is my favorite right here. I got light pink, regular pink, magenta, and purple. It's quite the collection of colors.
The AMS2 holds 4 different spools and automatically recognizes the color and filament type when it's loaded.
What do you think it's gonna look like?
Unicorns.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Can I touch it?
Yeah.
If you're someone who needs an advanced 3D printer with a large build volume or dual nozzles, and you'd also like to have a laser without buying a separate machine, then the H2D is the perfect choice for you. I'm just using it all the time, both in my video projects and just for fun off camera as well.
What does that spell?
Be very bunny.
Bonnie!
Oh, maybe a little down. Yep, this is perfect. I like the sparkles.
I want to thank Bamboo for sponsoring this video, and I can't reiterate enough how much fun I'm having with their H2D all-in-one 3D printer.
Well, I just called and scheduled the concrete delivery. Got 1 week to get these forms set up, so the pressure's on. On the outside form, which sits on the outside of the concrete pad, I'm putting some little cleats around the bottom of it to hold it at the right height on top of the pad. Man, I hate doing this, but I think I gotta split it in 2 to get it out there. Shouldn't be too bad to put back together out there. That doesn't feel good.
Even after splitting the forms in 2, each half was still just barely within my ability to lift it. But getting them into place felt great. I cleaned up the top edge of the slab and dropped the form onto it. I was really happy with how well it matched the slab shape. I've been worried the bent plywood would want to open the curve back up, but if it did, it wasn't much. I screwed the 2 halves back together, then worked around the wall, driving the bottom of the form tight to the slab, and adjusting the top to plumb. Sometimes I needed to push it in, and other times pull it out. Pulling it out was way harder. I had to get a little inventive at times. I even used a ratchet strap that I attached to the power pole anchor to pull it plumb in one spot.
I'm getting there. It's just hard because like right here I need to push out. That brings these sides in since it's on a circle. There's just a lot of weird forces working on this.
For the other side, I called in a favor with my brother-in-law, which I absolutely should have done on the first side too.
That was 10 times faster. Made some good progress today. It's so much fun for me because this shape lived in my head and on the computer for so long, and now it's starting to finally come to life. So much fun getting to see it out here. It's feeling pretty strong. Pretty happy with how the 2x4s are strengthening up once I tie it into the side of the hill. So I think it's gonna work pretty good. Next up, I gotta start running the horizontal rebar, and then I'll bring out the inside set of forms. I really like the concrete on the retaining wall to have a nice smooth finish. And the CDX that I used for the forms is pretty rough. There's a lot of knot holes and voids and stuff here and there. And I think even all the nail holes are gonna show up in the concrete. So one thing I've been thinking about doing is lining the forms with some tar paper, which is really heavy paper, and it would, I think, give it a lot smoother finish. But the one thing I'm worried about is if it's gonna stick to the concrete. So I'm gonna take the time to do a little test and see if that's gonna be an issue or not. It just seems like this should work. I think there'd be enough oil in the paper to keep it from sticking. So we'll find out. My tar paper side here, and this is the check side, just the regular plywood. See how much sticks to that too. And I want to see how much the wood grain actually shows up in it. And I'm gonna test out my corner strips too, just to make sure they look like I think they're going to. Let's see how it did. Here's the wood grain side. You can definitely see the wood grain coming through. Turn it around. It's a lot smoother. You can still see a little bit of a pattern from the felt paper. It almost looks like a mudded look though. Not sure which I like better. Corner brackets turned out great. I just taped them in place with some shipping tape, and I'm really surprised that you can see that come through actually. So I think I'll glue them in place instead of tape them.
I decided messing with the tar paper wasn't worth it, and just sprayed all the wood down with some diesel, which I had read works really well as a release agent. I kept picturing the tar paper tearing during the pour, and concrete getting behind it, and what a mess that would be. I dragged my ring roller out to the fire pit to put a radius in the rebar. Worked really well. Spring clamps were also clutch to hold the bars in place while I tied them.
Quite a few comments in the last video saying that I'm not supposed to weld rebar because it leads to more corrosion when it's in the concrete later on, which makes sense. So I'm trying to do everything with these wires. But I do have my welder on standby over there if I need it. Takes a little bit to get the hang of these wires, but they aren't too bad. They're pretty quick. I've learned that if you pull on them or you twist them, it makes a big difference. The hard part's not over tightening them. They snap pretty easy. Like that one.
Once the stair wall forms were in position, I realized I needed to tweak their shape a little to fit the hillside better. This made them a little beefier too, which I liked. With the new framing pieces added, I ran the rebar around the corner and up the sidewalls. This time I called in a favor from some of the farm guys, and we were able to carry the forms out in one piece.
Perfect.
No. Dad, this one doesn't fit.
It will once we pull out on this one. Here. You do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, last day. Concrete comes tomorrow, so the pressure's on to get these forms done. I'm using these snap ties, which lock the walls together at 8 inches apart, and they pull them really tight to each other. So, gotta get them all on this one side, and then pull the wall over and get it in. The first wall went together really well, but I think this one's gonna be a little harder. It's a lot longer of a curve to work with. So I had to be so accurate with the framing. the studs need to match up with each other for both sides of the snap ties. It's really hard because you only have a couple inches to work with on the snap ties to get this side started before this side falls out. So I think what my plan is to get this corner started and then try to spiral it in and work my way around the rest of the circle. We'll see how it goes. I know the hardest part's going to be reaching these bottom ones. Last three. That wasn't too bad actually.
The snap ties were meant for 3/4 inch plywood, so I had to add a spacer on each one to get them to tighten fully. I was really hoping the outer wall strength would transfer through to the inner wall via the snap ties. I checked the end to make sure it was positioned correctly to maintain the 8-inch thickness around the corner, and then tighten the snap ties on the inside form. Then I put the end caps on.
Well, my last thing to do is put in the corner pieces. These are all 20 inches long, so I made these 10, and I'll just use 2 of them. The construction adhesive works really well, actually.
I realized I messed up and the corner going up the stairs wasn't 90 degrees, and these pieces weren't going to work. So I got a new set of corner pieces printing with the right angle.
Fresh out the printer, I got the new corner radiuses with the right angle. These are the ones I was using for the rest of it at 90 degrees. And I probably could have found something like this online, a product, or in town somewhere. But I definitely could not have found something like this. It's 99 degrees that I needed to get the right fit. And that's what I love about 3D printing. It's just so powerful to be able to print exactly what you need. And you don't have to worry about trying to find it somewhere or source it somewhere else. And it's gonna be a lot harder to get it down at the bottom. I'll try some double-sided tape here. Stay on there. Worked. There's no small miracle that I did not drop in it. I think especially on this corner here, it's gonna be really nice having a soft radius because people come down the stairs and they'll turn and you wouldn't want to be scraping yourself on that sharp corner of the concrete.
On concrete delivery day, I woke up to some heavy rain.
All right, concrete truck comes in about an hour. Got a nice rainy day for some concrete here. Man, I hope my forms hold up. At least I can say that I really didn't take any shortcuts and did them to the best of my ability. I just hope the best of my ability is enough for this job. I know concrete's so heavy and it puts so much weight on the forms. They feel rock solid. I mean, I can't budge them. So I think as long as the 1/2-inch plywood's thick enough to hold up to the weight, it should be okay. We'll find out.
One thing I've learned through this project, you have to book the concrete and the lined pump separately. They're usually different companies.
Ready for concrete?
Don't let Roshin's calm demeanor fool you. She ran down the stairs like it was Christmas morning yelling, "It's concrete day." She spent a lot of time out here on this project with me from the very beginning. It's been a lot of fun. The line pumper worked the hose and filled the forms. He had wireless controls to turn the pump on and off.
Yeah, it's a little floundering, sorry. Oh, no, it's fine.
The mix was really wet, maybe too wet. It flowed through the form like a river, and actually made it all the way to the far end from filling it at the opposite side up top.
Look at that concrete down there. That's dropping.
Vibrator yet, or a little more time?
The nice thing though was that it seemed like it was going to settle really well. I've been worried about voids inside the wall all along, and it didn't seem like it was going to be an issue with the concrete being this wet. I asked Dan to give me a hand. He works on our farm, and he's happy to jump in. I told him there probably wasn't going to be too much for him to do, but if something went wrong, it was going to be great having another set of hands to help out. Once one side was nearly topped off, we moved to the other side.
No, I'm just putting those to hold the sides apart. They're pushing in really hard. Plywood's bulging out a little bit.
We tapped the sides of the forms with hammers to help it settle. Each time we tapped it, you could see the top visibly drop a little bit.
Where's it bulging?
Oh, just in small places. It's not that bad. You can just see it.
Okay.
It misses the
Not
water.
that lower bottom wall yet.
Everybody told me to be very careful with the concrete vibrator and use it sparingly, that they can break forms apart really easily. And yeah, the hour pressure when I used it was no joke. I moved fast, but I did make it around the whole form.
The concrete pumper talked me into putting some caps on the end here, and I'm really glad I did because we definitely needed it. Even over here, still pushing out a little bit. It's pretty wet concrete. It's been about an hour now, so I think we can take these off safely. Looks pretty nice like that.
Luckily the rain had stopped, but the oak tree was still dropping big drops, so I kept things covered up. I've still got a lot to learn about finishing concrete, but it seems the best thing to do is to edge while it's still fairly wet, in order to push the bigger aggregate away from the edge. It doesn't look great at first, but it sets you up for a cleaner finish once it firms up. I like working with concrete. It's stressful, but it's fun. I was glad I kept an extra bucket of mix set aside for topping off the low spots. I just gave it a stir every now and then, and it stayed soft. Once it had firmed up, I hit it with a steel trowel, which really made it look nice. There are a few coffee breaks during the day to give the concrete a little bit of time when it needed it, but finishing kept me busy most of the day.
It's been 2 days. Let's get these forms off.
I was tempted to pull the forms off after one day, but decided to give it 48 hours just to be safe. I didn't show it, but I snipped the ends of the snap ties with bolt cutters so they wouldn't catch. I was really happy when the first form came off and the concrete underneath looked pretty dang good. And actually, as the forms came off, I realized I kind of like this little texture from the rough plywood. I didn't mind it at all, and I felt kind of silly for worrying about getting that smooth finish. The snap ties popped off easily with a bend and a twist. I also don't mind the cone indentations they left, especially since I'd spaced them in a clean grid across the wall. I was really careful not to pry against the new concrete. It's still pretty green. I used a diamond grinding wheel on the angle grinder to clean up the corners that I couldn't get to with the corner trowel. I had to be really careful and used very light pressure. The grinding wheel eats to the soft concrete very quickly. The grinding wheel also did a really good job taking out some of the lines left in the concrete from the forms between the sheets of plywood. I worked my way around the inside of the wall, chipping away the little bit of concrete that had seeped out from the bottom of the form. And then the last thing to do was to give everything a good coat of sealant. A few little things to nitpick, some spots where the plywood bowed slightly, and a few small Swiss cheese pockets, but overall I'm really happy with how the pour went and how solid the forms held up.
Back and forth.
I still need to knock out the stairs, so there's a bit more concrete work to do, but I'm really itching to start getting the wood beams up for the structure over the fire pit. Right now it's got this kind of 80s German brutalist vibe going on out here. And I think the wood's really going to soften everything up and pull the whole space together.